again. This is the Vampire Lucinda. Doing a more detailed review of Dragon Ball Evolution. As you all know, it's completely bombed in theaters at this point. A lot of theaters actually stopped showing it, which is totally great because that movie was a complete disgrace to the Dragon Ball name. I'm glad it's going to be phased out, and hopefully we can all forget about it, or at least pretend it never existed and then move on with our lives. I mean, there's no excuse for that movie, but more on that later. Um, so this is going to be one of the manga slash anime slash movie comparisons, and I think I'll start off with Yamcha since he didn't get that much exposure in the movie, even though he's actually a pretty, important character in Dragon Ball. Now, I have to say, he wasn't the main character, obviously, but he plays a big role. I mean, he's more than just, comedy relief. The point of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, even the smaller characters have, they help out. They play a role at some point. Even if they die, even if they're not as, strong as, Goku, or later on if they're not, as strong as the Saiyans, or if they're not, eventually it came down. I mean, by the time you get to GT, the only ones who could actually really hold their own were Goku and Vegeta, the Saiyans. But, not that that's a good or bad thing, but, the humans did play an important role, and in Dragon Ball Evolution, Yamcha plays virtually no role. He first appears in the movie. Apparently, he dug a hole and he trapped Goku, Bulma, and Master Roshi. They fell into his hole, and he's like, "Oh, pay me, and I'll throw the ladder down." The scene is really stupid because it ends with Master Roshi jumping out of the hole and threatening Yamcha, who apparently can't fight at this. For some reason he can't fight at all. No Wolfang Fist, which is ridiculous, but yeah, he can't fight at all, and he ends up with a giant drill, and they magically get into a cave where the Dragon Ball is placed on a stone. Now, besides all the problems with that alone, they missed out on one fundamental feature of Yamcha's character, and that is his fear of girls. Now, Yamcha was terrified of women. In fact, he wanted to get the Dragon Balls so that he could wish that he would no longer be afraid of women. It was hilarious. He would see Bulma and take off in the other direction. And Yamcha wasn't, a bad looking character. He was Yamcha, he was obviously a fighter, obviously one of those, above human fighters like Goku and later Krillin and Master Roshi and all them. But yeah, in this movie he just had no fighting skills and he was just some guy. His actor, I forget his name, shoot, but his actor was very, very not. He didn't seem to be all there when delivering some of his lines. His acting was very poor. I don't know what else he's been in. I can't recall him in any other movies. Maybe I just haven't seen it, but he wasn't Yamcha. He looked too old, and Yamcha was about Bulma's age in Dragon Ball. They were about the same age. In fact, at the end of Dragon Ball, at the end of the first, encounter with Pilaf after Goku goes to Zaru, they get together in the manga. But here they don't really develop that. Yamcha's not at all, like I said, he's not at all afraid of girls, and he and Bulma in Dragon Ball Evolution just seem to randomly hook up. There's no explanation. It's like, hey, I've known you for all of 2 days. Let's get together. There's no, the actors have no chemistry, and it's just bad. Bulma and Yamcha were hilarious together. I thought they would have been a great couple. They were the couple until Bulma and Vegeta got together in Dragon Ball Z, but they really missed. His character. If you mess up a minor character this badly, it's like, no. If you can't be Yamcha right, so Snoopy. But also, Puar was completely eliminated. And I understand that they didn't want to have any of the anthropomorphic animal characters and whatnot. But Puar was just cute. Was it that hard to put a CGI floating cat in? More in in another one I'll do, the missing characters, but yeah, the whole realistic and Dragon Ball, it just doesn't go together. You have green people from space fighting over, fighting with humans and half humans and non humans over magical wish granting balls. I mean, you can't get, there's no realism in it. It's just fun. Like, why have Yamcha be some desert? I mean, he didn't even really seem like a desert bandit. He just seemed like some beach bum who ended up in the desert in Dragon Ball Evolution. I mean, it made no sense. Also, for those of you who have seen Dragon Ball The Magic Begins, I mean, or whatever it was called, the unofficial live action one made in China in like, what was it, late 80s, early 90s? It was, I mean, Yamcha was, they portrayed his character excellently, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the movie was, cheesily done. It was the 90s slash 80s. I mean, of course, the effects weren't great. But Yamcha saw Bulma while he was fighting Goku, just like in the manga, just like in the anime and Dragon Ball. Saw Bulma and ran. That's all. That's all I wanted. Like, they didn't have Puar, but they had him with a parrot. Okay, that was a good compromise there. But yeah, he saw Bulma, took off in the opposite direction. Happened multiple times in the movie. That's all. That's all you had to do. Like, that's all. And they had him be more like a princely character, because I mean, even in the manga a little bit, Yamcha was sort of like, I am, and Puar calls him, Yamcha-sama, which is really respectful and whatnot. But yeah, Dragon Ball Evolution completely like just threw out Yamcha's character and replaced it with like random guy number one. Like that, seeing the movie, I would not have known that was Yamcha unless someone pointed him out and said, "That's Yamcha," and I'm like, what? I mean, it was like that for most of the movie, but how do you mess up his character? You just get. I mean, the omission of Wolfgang Fist plus like all of Yamcha's fighting techniques was just embarrassing. I mean, Yamcha, what was this? He was in a freaking tournament. Like, he's a Z warrior, as as Funimation as Dub says, but like, you can't just make Yamcha generic guy number two and throw him in there just for the sake of having his name in the movie. Like, that is unacceptable. I mean, that is just completely unacceptable. And then, in some of the interviews, they're like, oh, yeah, the characters are, the fans will be happy because you see Yamcha. And it's like, no, I didn't see Yamcha at all. I saw some guy, I mean, in the movie, and then he had all these terrible one-liners. I mean, it was just, he really was like generic surfer dude number two. And completely boring. No, I'm not even really clear what happened at the end when he tells Bulma to run. When Goku turns to Azaru, and he tells Bulma, run, here, take the Dragon Ball, or the gun, or whatever he gave her. No, she gave him his gun. I don't know what he gave her. And Bulma runs off, and then he just doesn't appear. Like, he didn't stop Goku at all, or Mai, who starts to fight with Bulma, which is a whole different problem. By the way, Mai was never named, FYI, which is a shame because you should do that in a movie. But yeah, Yamcha, his character was. I mean, I'm not even the biggest Yamcha fan out there, but even I know, like, you can't just throw out a. They kept Yamcha, which is great, but turned him in generic guy number one. It's like, no wonder they kept out Krillin, Tenshin Han, Lunch. Like, they kept everyone out because they didn't know they couldn't keep these amazing characters amazing. Apparently, they had to turn them into like guy number two, guy number three, guy with Goku and Bulma number one. It was just really bad. Yeah. So thanks for listening. That was a little rant on Yamcha. Whom I'm not, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan, but he is an important character. Not the main character, but he's one of Goku's, best friends, and he's a Z warrior, and you can't just throw him out like that. And I mean, don't get me started on Krillin, but like, you can't just do that. I mean, Dragon Ball was more than a bunch of people walking around, and that's what this movie was. A bunch of people walking around with no purpose. So yeah, continue to take this movie out. Thanks.